We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello, and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. Except today, it's not about Red Dwarf. That's right, we've gone back in time a few hours, and before we have to get back to our machine, we're going to talk about another show. We're here to talk about Crime Traveller. I'm your host, Carl Bryan, and joining me today is Mark Adams. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Carl. I love that we are doing this because it's one of our ridiculously far-reaching specials. And, you know, we've been talking about Keith Dagger as, like, the name of a good detective. I looked for Keith Dagger on Facebook, and it turns out that there's a Keith Dagger that lives not too far away from me in Preston. I haven't messaged him. That would be weird.
How great would it be if he was a Crime Traveller fan?
I'm still not going to message him.
Fair enough. And also joining us today is Matt Latham. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Carl. Carl Dagger, how are you?
I'm not too bad, Matt Dagger.
Carl Dagger.
Mark, do you want to be a dagger like us too?
Fucking hell. Sure, Mark Dagger.
The Dagger Brothers sounds like some kind of 60s pop group.
Yeah. We all wear matching outfits and play quite sunny pop, maybe sometimes with a political message.
Yeah.
But the matching outfits would obviously have to be yellow jackets, right?
Absolutely.
Talking of yellow jackets, I have a podcast called No Book Club. Badum.
Nice. Good.
Right. So we are here today to talk about episode 4 of Crime Traveller.
Does that mean I can get away because there's a yellow jacket in this? I can probably put all these on the No Book Club feed.
I mean, I have put less tenuously linked shit on the Red Dwarf one.
Sorry, Carl, carry on.
That's all right. So yes, today we are here to talk about episode 4 of Crime Traveller, The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
Yay!
I'm going to give you a clap for that. Well done, dear.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. You stuttered. You have to say it again.
The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
Sorry?
Nice.
The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
As titles go, that's a pretty fabulous one. I'm delighted that it exists as a thing.
I think it was made to trip up continuity announcers. So this was broadcast, funnily enough, 7 days after the last episode on 22nd of March, 1997 on BBC One. And Mark and Matt, do you remember much about... I don't think the title actually leads in as to what the episode's about that much, as opposed to the last one, which was just simply called Fashion Shoot. But do you remember much about this episode from watching it at the time?
No, I think when I rewatched these, I rewatched them once round just as a reintroduction and then once again to do the analysis. I remember Crime Traveller being cool. I remember enjoying it and it's her from Red Dwarf, and yeah, I remember enjoying it, but I didn't really remember any of the specifics other than perhaps the way the room kind of did the out special effectsy thing.
Yeah, one of the things that I definitely remember from all the way back from when I watched it was that I do have vivid memories of episodes where just one of them went back. Because I remember like there was an episode where Holly went back, and then I do remember there was an episode where Slade goes back later on. Because I've always had the image of I think Holly spotting the time thingy, the watch. I was quite interested that they did that early on, or at least they're already trying to find ways of mixing up the premise or the structure of the episodes early on. So, like, okay, it's not going to be the both of them going back. We need to try and figure out what we can do later on. And I quite appreciate that they're still trying to answer questions with that. So with the second episode, I think I remember bringing up saying that, right, let's see what happened if someone said, let's see if we can change history, or let's see. And I think there's a future episode which says, oh, what if one of them did try to win the lottery? Yeah, and like, oh, what would happen if one of them just went back in time? I quite like the idea. I quite like the fact that the series is addressing those questions people might have for the premise. So yeah, I quite like that happening quite early on.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, because if it was just like the two of them go back and this happens, they would run out of steam pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't feel that this is a show that would have, if it did continue, I don't feel it would have gone on for like 12 series. I don't think it would have had the length of a Red Dwarf, but certainly at least 2 or 3. But yeah, it would be hard to keep it up. But they were doing a good job with stuff like this episode. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they were happy to play with the premise, but it didn't go too far. I mean, we're all fans of Quantum Leap as well as Red Dwarf, the three of us. And Quantum Leap, the first couple of series, played it really, really safe. But as they got a little bit further on, they did experiment with another leaper and that sort of thing. And by the end of this series, they were looking at that already. And I think it would have done it quicker than Quantum Leap, perhaps, because of the evidence of what we've seen in the first series and what they've played with already.
Yeah, I think with that they had the initial premise of the anthology show, and I think by the end of, I think even series 4, I think the odd time in series 3, I think they said, what do we do if we explore the actual mechanics of the premise? So they had, like, I think Shock Theatre, which is the last episode of series 3 of Quantum Leap, where they had Sam kind of have previous leaps inhabit him, and then they had the owl leaping story, and then series 5 is the one where they suddenly just realised, let's go balls to the wall with science fiction, and not the best episodes, but they're the most remembered because they're the ones where they stand out because of how different they are. And I quite like, and I think that Anthony Horowitz probably think, okay, we need to get that out of our system, or at least find ways to keep the premise fresh, because you're going to have like geeks watch it, and also they're not going to have the luxury of having 22 episodes a season. So just like to be generic, so we need to kind of mix things up.
Yeah, it would have been quite interesting because I don't think Horowitz has written anything for Who since it came back in 2005. I'd be interested to see what he'd have done with an episode of Doctor Who, certainly.
Had the Doctor wear a yellow jacket, probably. Mustard
Well,
jacket.
We'll get into something about that later. Thinking about it, only 2 members of the cast were really doing prime time stuff on the BBC. Chloe Annett and Chris Barry, when the British Empire was in full swing. That was on prime time. The other 3, I mean, obviously Craig Charles would go on to do Corrie. The other 3 never really did anything like a prime time series, did they?
Yeah, Death in Paradise, Danny John Jules.
True. That was a long time afterwards, though, wasn't it? At the kind of peak of Dwarf. Yeah. I didn't think about it. I didn't really watch Death in Paradise.
I mean, during Red Dwarf.
No, I think you're right. During Red Dwarf, it was Rimmer and Kochanski.
Yeah.
There's the Prince Among Men, but we don't. But
we don't talk about Prince Among Men.
We're definitely going to talk about a Prince Amongst Men.
Here's a winner. Here's a star. Here's a prince. For some reason, that theme tune stuck in my head all these years, and I ain't watched it since.
You're going to watch it, though, aren't you?
Do I have a choice?
You are a designated Barry maniac.
Fair enough.
That's true.
Right. So, getting into this was directed by Richard Stroud, then going by Rick Stroud, who directed quite a few episodes. He directed 4 of the episodes in this. And he came from a heritage of doing things like he did a mini-series about Diana in the early 80s. Also, he did a lot of Coronation Street in the 70s. And I think then he went on to do stuff like The Vanishing Man with Neil Morrissey, Monarch of the Glen. But one thing he did do, which is a series that I remember loving a lot, and I have found it on YouTube since, is he did a sitcom called Class Act with Joanna Lumley. Do either of you two remember that one?
That's not a sitcom. That was that comedy drama on ITV that went for about an hour.
Yeah.
Because that had... Oh... Did that have Junior Sohalia in it?
I don't know if she was in it, but it was about a woman who'd gone from being super rich to not having anything.
I'm pretty sure I can't remember the guy, but there was one of the main cast was a guy whose face I remember, who was like afraid of heights. And I'm sure there was a scene in it where he had to try and shimmy across a building.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that.
Yeah, the main kind of male lead in it was John Bowe, who turns up in lots of stuff. Like he was in Corrie for a long time. He's in like Tip in the Velvet, and he's just one of those actors who always finds work.
That's it, John Bowe. That's it. Yeah.
I'm going to watch this series again because I just remember it being really, really good at the time. So yeah, I want to watch it again. It went for a couple of series as well. It was one of those ones that stuck under the radar, but yeah, I'm gonna recheck that out. Anyway, yeah. So Rick Stroud comes from quite a prestigious televisual career, and carried on working right up for a while actually until 2006. So, if we're sitting comfortably, let's begin. Anyway, so yes, we're going to start off with the episode. Holly is giving a speech at the Institute of Time, which I felt was a very specific institute. And it's a very big building as well. It's a lovely, the location manager really did well there. Her speech is about how it's impossible for anybody to change the time via time travel. Everybody seems very impressed. However, she gets slow clapped by a gentleman fully embracing the trope of being a professor.
I got notes which are pretty much word for word nearly that.
Yeah,
my notes are pretty similar. I wrote wanky academic. I used to work at a university. I met plenty of those.
I kind of thought, he's gone for the Heinz Wolf kind of look, but with less mad hair. Outside, we learn he is Professor Bernstein, who enjoyed the speech with reservations, and then very aloofly claims all of Holly's and her father's work is completely hypothetical because time travel will never be achieved.
Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Yeah, and he looks over his glasses at her while she's saying all of this. And I just thought this was a lovely moment of Holly nodding along and going, absolutely, Professor, because she knows it's actually doable because she's done it herself. Nothing's better in some shows like this than an aloof person just being proved wrong and they don't realise it.
I really liked that the speech referenced Stephen Hawking. That actually seems like the right thing to do. That was a really nice little nod, and it's a blink and you miss it, but it was perfect in my eyes, that particular moment.
I do think that her speech and about the paradoxes and time travel and changing the past and stuff perhaps dumbed down a little because for a Saturday evening universe to understand what the hell's going on. I have a feeling that considering it's an institute of time and full of people who, I'm assuming that actually in real life, Holly Turner would have been using a lot more kind of jargon where it would have just been going timey-wimey.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that it was slightly dumbed down for just to understand slightly what it meant more.
Yeah. Holly's nodding along and smiling until she notices a television behind her, which seemed very weird for the receptionist to have the TV on. And the news is on. She sees somebody being wheeled on a stretcher. It's Slade, and he's been shot. He's been rushed to hospital, and the shooter is a known criminal called John Crowley. Holly races out of the institute. Meanwhile, we see in the hospital Slade is hooked up to all of the machinery, including the machine that goes beep.
The beep machine.
Yeah.
Beep, beep, I'm a sheep. Said beep, beep, I'm a sheep.
So yeah, we've already got that set up there. I think it's quite clever that we don't see Slade until he's been shot. I quite like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought this kind of ties in. There's an episode of Doctor Who in, I think it's the 3rd series, where it starts with the Doctor being wheeled out on a stretcher and he's been killed, and you only just see the hand drop out and you don't see anything else. So Doctor Who kind of stole this bit, well, or did a very similar bit, from Crime Traveller, which I thought was quite cool. Holly races to the hospital, stopping slightly for the crew to do some quite odd action shots. Did you notice this? The weird crash zoom that they were doing on her as she was running and stuff?
No.
Did you not? It just kind of stuck out to me a bit that they did this kind of like crash zoom of her running down a corridor.
I think I've been distracted again by how brilliant she was and the believability of her acting when she saw the news report and her genuinely impressive look of concern, I think. So maybe I didn't see that because I was going, gosh, she's really good. Again.
I remember, was it the first episode of this? Because I think when we recorded this, it was probably before we started recording Series 7. And I can't remember if it was on the first Crime Traveller one, where I mused about whether someone at the BBC saw Chloe Annett and thought, she's a tip for big things, and that's why she got Red Dwarf and this very close to each other. And I think we're seeing why.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about this during the Series 7, that she found it quite hard to find her feet in the circumstances that Red Dwarf 7 was in, because while it's being filmed like a drama, it's still a sitcom, and they're still acting in a way like there should be a gap here for a laugh, if you know what I mean. Whereas this, it's just straight, it's a more traditional production.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Holly arrives at the ward to find that Slade is still in trauma. After asking when Slade was shot and finding out it is 6 p.m, she races out of the hospital and back to the flat because now it is time to time travel. She passes, I think, one of everybody's favourite characters, Danny, who's a bit confused as Holly has just gone past her. Holly manages to dissuade him by telling him how nice his carpet is, which I thought was quite interesting, just sort of how she thinks she's going to get past Danny by going, lovely carpet.
Works, though.
It does work. She gets into the machine, and as she sets it up, she spots her speech, and you can tell that she's thinking about how you can't change the past via time travel, but determinedly fires up the machine. And like you said, you can see in her face, she knows, really, if she's right, she can't do anything, but she's going to do something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And again, it's a great reaction from Chloe Annett.
I mean, it's also the quickest I think we've gone back in time. Well, apart from the pilot, I'm sure this is the quickest we've gone back in time. So we've not had a good, third of the episode of setup. Yeah. And again, so it's probably, so it's nice to have a different format again. It's probably refreshing for Anthony Horowitz not to kind of go, right, let's do this. Now it's time to do this. So being able to just do the funky time traveling bit straight away. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we go.
Basically, we're joining at the end of what would have been, if there was no time travel, we're joining at the end of what would have been the story, which is Slade getting shot.
Yeah.
And then we're having to read the same as we were talking about in the last episode, that, the Sonia, the fashion designer, getting shot happens after 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it was you that said the third act has already happened, but we're still in the first act.
Yeah.
As Holly is going back in time, obviously it trips out everything in the building, and we get what's probably a horror movie style shot of Danny appearing to be attacked by his own vacuum cleaner. As it races towards him and he's sort of against the wall going like, ah! But we'll come back to Danny later. So Holly arrives at 8 a.m. and heads straight for the station. Fortunately, she's at the Institute, so there's no chance of a schism here, folks. This is a schism-free zone. However, she has just missed Slade, who's off out for an early morning murder. Which, and this is a fun, I like this detail that happens all throughout the series, he's late. Slade is always late.
Yeah. I like that plays into the dangerously late stuff when they get, when they're struggling to get back in time for the time machine.
Yeah. That Slade's timekeeping is just terrible.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those, it's kind of like one of those quirks you've got to try and make the hero relatable. So he goes like he's indestructible and could probably punch an asteroid to save the world, but he'll probably be 5 minutes late.
Yeah. We discover that this week's victim is an artist called Ken Jabara, who's been shot in the back of the head about 10 p.m. while he was painting in his studio. No sign of forced entry, and the back door to his studio is open. Gresham explains to us that Jabara was the most exciting new artist of his generation, which shows she had a quick Google before she came out to the studio today.
Would it have been Google in 1997?
Ask Jeeves.
Or Lycos?
Let's carry on. So Jabara is dead, and now his paintings are going to be worth tens of thousands, and now he's dead. All the paintings are accounted for because Morris found the catalogue. However, there is an empty frame on the easel, which may not have been in the catalogue. Gresham tells Slade to get on it, as once this gets out, it'll be front page news. I'm surprised at that. Sort of, why are you kind of keeping it a secret? It's just an artist. Why are you hiding that? Why do you really need to keep a secret? And then she slaps him. And then Morris slaps him.
That was cool. That was fun.
Yeah. And then Nikki doesn't slap him. Which I genuinely, because I couldn't remember this episode very well from the first time, I genuinely thought Nikki was going to go for the slap and then not pull it off. But he doesn't slap him. But he does tell him about the neighbour who reported it. And the main fact about him is, what is the main fact about him, Mark?
That's not in my notes.
Oh, he keeps cats.
Oh, I've put lots of cats love heart in my notes. Yeah, I liked the cats. I thought it was something more complicated than cats that I'd missed or something. No, it's cats. I love cats. He likes cats, and I like cats. Therefore, I like him.
Yeah.
Cats.
In my notes, then we get a harrowing glimpse into Mark's potential future as we meet Kelly, who has cats everywhere.
Funny enough, I put that similar in my notes.
Right. Here's the reason why this isn't the reality already, is because my cat really doesn't like other cats. If she liked other cats, I would have a fucking menagerie. So you're taking the piss, but you're absolutely not wrong.
we know Mark too well.
Yeah. So I'm hardly a complex human being. I like cats, and therefore I like cats, and I've got an addictive personality. I'm likely to get lots of cats. You've seen how many tattoos I've got.
So much so, it's pretty much the only kind of host characteristic that's pointed out in the advert that I did.
Mm.
So we need to keep what we're advertising about your obsession with all cats. So
I do love cats.
You got to live the gimmick, brother.
It's not a gimmick.
While being questioned, Kelly says he heard a shot about 9:45. When asked if he's mistaken, Kelly states that he is a veteran and knows what a gunshot is, which I thought was quite nice. A quite nice point, because they made him camp. I don't know whether this was a choice on the actor's part but he has quite a camp voice. And when he said, look, I was a veteran, I know what a gunshot is, I was like, that's good. That's twisting the expectation of somebody with that voice.
I didn't even think about it, but you're absolutely right.
Because he comes, obviously, like, I collect cats. I've got a slightly quite light and camp voice. And they're like, oh, well, it could have been a car backfire. It was like, no, I know what a gunshot is. And they're like, yes.
Yeah,
Good.
it's like the kind of quirky one-shot character that's got like a characteristic that's probably meant to be off-putting or just make you think, who's this weirdo? But then thinking, don't sass me. I've been through some serious shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was right. So once he heard the gunshot, he called the police straight away. And then he went out to, and this is a phrase that you probably only hear in the 90s and you would only ever hear in British TV. He went outside to light a fag. Like, you very rarely hear cigarettes called fags on British TV. With good reason. Yeah, but that just seemed very British, that phrase. Oh, I went outside and I lit a fag.
Oh, it is very British.
When he went outside to have his cigarette, he saw her, not saying who it was, heading out carrying something suspiciously painting shaped.
The thing is, a painting shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see how it's suspicious. It was shaped like a painting.
Yeah, the look on everyone's face as well, they kind of look at each other like, hang on a minute. And it's like, it's blatantly the painting. Why are you surprised?
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So as they're walking around, walking back to the car, Nikki starts filling in what they know about Jabara, including that he dealt in abstract expressionism and was influenced by the artist Kazimir Malevich. And I thought during this, Slade had this proper look of big brother paternal pride at Nikki just going through all this information, which I thought was a very sweet moment. It's like, Nikki is awesome, but it's kind of misplaced.
I think Nikki is the surprise hit character of this series. He's so adorable. And I think the actor's, again, a great actor who does a really good job at making him lovable. He could have been a weird little stereotype, but he's not. He's really charming in his dorky way. And that's a difficult thing to portray, I think. So, yeah, a surprise hit, that character, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like as well, it's like basically seeming to like know, oh yeah, this is so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm surprised there wasn't like something saying, how do you know all this, Nikki? He's like, uni or something. I'm surprised there isn't something like that.
And when he comes out with a lot of this information, which he does do in quite a few episodes, it doesn't sound like he's researched it. It sounds like he actually knows it.
Yeah,
which is quite good.
It's like he's got a bunch of general knowledge. Like he'll probably give the eggheads a good run for the money. He's just naive and inexperienced.
Yeah, you get the feeling that he could reel off something like this, like without a problem. But if you asked him, like, where's Emmerdale set, he wouldn't have a clue.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, like or to name one of the Kardashians.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think in an alternative world where this lasted a bit, you know how Morse led to Lewis.
Yes.
Like you probably have crime travel leading to Nikki.
Yeah.
Where like Nikki starts solving time traveling crimes, or to make things different, he gets thrown into the future. So he's like teamed up with like a robot, solving futuristic crimes. And
can you imagine if the spin-off is like Lewis, but his sidekick is Morris?
Brilliant.
Because in this, I mean, they don't really spend that much time together, but you get the feeling that Nikki and Morris are friends. We see later on in the episode them talking to each other, and it's like they are mates, and they shouldn't be really on paper.
Yeah. Last week, just like jumping the gun bit. Last week when you mentioned about a spin-off with Nikki and Morris, I think we get the backdoor pilot of that in this week of Nikki and Morris.
Yeah, I think again talking about if the series did continue, this kind of leads up to like, the Nikki and Morris are going to get more. They're going to get more to do when this goes to a second series.
You know what I could have probably foreseen happening is that series 2, Nikki investigating or having a hunch that Slade and Holly are doing something, and like investigating them, but not like in that kind of antagonistic usual, like it's the rival of a character way, just like something weird's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not exactly an antagonist, but like perhaps like Will in Alias, the first season of Alias, where they're not an antagonistic, but they're investigating something, and it will probably lead them to the path or something. I could see that happening like a series in like a future series that we never will get.
I can imagine like in maybe the final series of this, if they announced a final one, or like in the final episode, all of them go back in time, like Gresham, Morris, Nikki.
Yeah.
And it's just chaos but they just managed to get back, and that's when the machine blows up or something. Or Morris gets stuck in the infinite loop or something.
Yeah.
That'd be harsh. Even Morris deserves a happy ending.
True, he does. So Nikki reveals that Jabara was stinking rich but mean about it, and he had an acrimonious divorce from his ex-wife, Louise, who has a florist on the Edgemore Road. Slade then notices Holly, and I've written here in brackets, in a fantastic ensemble.
True.
It's a really good outfit. Who fibs and tells Slade a conference was cancelled, and she tags along with Slade. I thought this was a really nice bit. Just was like, oh, so you wanna help? Yeah. It's almost like, oh, taking my kid to work day. You know, it was a bit like that. You know, like he's really touched that she wants to come with him and help. But then we go to the next scene where Slade immediately starts to go to the flat to use the time machine, and Holly says we can't go because it's broken. Again, showing Slade's ever-growing reliance on the time machine. He's going straight there after doing any detective work.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting episode would have been where the time machine broke and he actually had to do some stuff without using the time machine.
Yeah, definitely. No, maybe a comedy episode where Holly's ill or has broken her leg or something, so she's at home and she's just like, you can't use the time machine. Sorry, I'm recuperating. And yeah, he's actually got to do a case on his own. Slade offers to take her back to the office, but Holly insists on hanging out with him today on her day off. They go and see the ex-wife, who's absolutely fine about Jabara being dead. She explains she hadn't seen him in about 2 weeks and only really talks to him through a solicitor. She thinks she might have a key to the studio somewhere, but if they want some real answers, they should talk to a Brett Levinson, who's an art dealer who was always in and out of the studio. As they're leaving, Holly stops to ask the former Mrs. Jabara if she knew a man called Crowley, but she has never heard that name before. So this is the initial thing of Slade notices Holly mentioning Crowley. So this is where, as a bit of a spoiler for the end of the episode, if it wasn't for Holly mentioning Crowley, they never would have met Crowley, and none of this situation would have actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that.
Which I think, it's a weird one to get your head around initially, but then you realise that's actually really clever. It's like, Holly's proved herself completely right, and but it's not a great deal, but she wants to kind of fight against it, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? It's I can't think of the right thing to say. Somebody help me here.
It's a continuing kind of motif that time travel actually gets them into more trouble than not, and they cause a lot of the shit by time traveling.
It's also that kind of thing where if time travel was possible, we are always in the timeline where anyone's gone back to do stuff. I think it's the thing I mentioned in the first episode. Everyone goes about, go back and kill Hitler. The only time anyone would ever have been able to come back in time and kill Hitler would have been in that bunker in 1945. So if anyone's ever done it, it would have been then. So like
Yeah.
it's that kind of things are kind of set to happen, and you can't go back, but actions in the past would have been affected by future time travelers anyway, so that would have always been the present. So you can't change things. It's just that the time travelers are always meant to have changed it. The only drawback with that is when was the first time that happened, because there has to have been a start of that loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we wouldn't know if any time traveling had been done because the timeline would have been changed and we'd have been none the wiser of anything different.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So as they're about to get back in the car, Slade notices something. Holly is wearing the watch. It's not hard to notice that she's wearing the watch as well.
Does he have to have been worn? That's what I don't get. Just like
I
put it
don't
in a
think
pocket.
so. Yeah, she could have put it anywhere else, but no, giant. It's at this point I realised that the actual strap isn't. I thought it was like plastic, but it's not. It's like a cushion, and I don't know if that is an act, because I'm sure in the first episodes it's hard and it like clicks in.
It was like a pop swatch.
Yeah. So I don't know if in this episode she's got like this soft one on just because it's more comfortable for Chloe to wear. But on camera, it's very apparent that it's soft. But yeah,
Well, when I had a pop swatch, you could like get the filigree. Why can't I think of a better word than filigree? You could get the filigree and the watch itself, take them off the strap, and then you could put your watch in a T-shirt if you put the filigree on the inside. So maybe she could do that and have like a police camera. She could have like that.
You could have like Iron Man's thing in the middle of her chest.
That's true, yeah. Yeah.
With a countdown on it. Immediately people think it's a bomb.
True.
So once Slade notices the watch, he excuses himself to go to a phone booth. I remember them. And calls Professor Bernstein. He confirms that Holly is there at the Institute of Time and is about to go up and give her talk any minute now. So now Slade knows Holly that he's talking to is time traveling.
Yeah. I like this. I mean, where the flipping heck was this perceptive ability last week?
He can't tell when a woman's mad at him, but he can tell when she's time traveled.
Yeah. But I do. But I do quite like that he doesn't. I can see why it doesn't take long for him to confront her about it. But I like how he at least doesn't reveal it straight away. And part of me kind of wishes they kind of kept that going a bit more. But then again, that probably would have been that wouldn't have been true to Slade's character, who's quite impulsive and direct anyway. But I quite like the fact that he worked on it.
He doesn't jump straight into it and says you're time traveling. He goes and checks because he could be wrong. But if he is wrong, why is she wearing the watch? You know what? I'm just going to wear this out. So over a cup of tea, Holly asks about the phone call where Slade reveals he spoke to Professor Bernstein and he knows that Holly is time traveling. Slade then points out what we're all thinking and points out the watch is absolutely massive.
Yeah, true.
Holly eventually reveals she's not here for Jabara, she's here for Slade. However, she can't tell him what's happened. When Slade pushes further, Holly gives an example of the butterfly effect, where if she causes Slade to run out and he gets hit by a car and everybody in the car dies, that's on Holly and that's her fault. Which I thought was a bit of a weird example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what she's doing anyway.
Yeah. Holly tries to leave. However, Slade now won't let her leave. He thinks this art dealer may know who Crowley is. As they reach the art gallery, all Holly will say about the situation is, it's serious. So, I mean, the fact that she's travelled through time and he's figured that out, the jig's kind of up. Why would you, if you were in this situation, would you tell the person that they were going to get shot later?
Yeah, it does feel like he's supposed to be a detective. He's supposed to be perceptive. You'd work that out pretty quickly, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you've come back without me, something's blatantly going to be happening to me, and chances are I'm going to be dead. Because you wouldn't say you're going to break your leg at 6 o'clock, would you? It's
Slade, you turn out to be a brain in a jar.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of I think it's Tom Scar who does a sketch about he's about to order a pizza, and he keeps coming back in from himself, and it just gets more and more ridiculous of all these things that happen, which depending on which pizza he orders, and it just gets to the point where it's like Nazi dinosaurs, but all of this is supposed to happen in an hour, and eventually it comes back. It's like don't order Mexican food. It's like, why not? Because you're going to crap your pants.
I think he's done quite a few time travel and dimension ones that are very similar in that kind of ilk, to do with kind of like changing history and.
Yeah, I mean, if one of us went back in time, a bit behind the scenes here, Mark had a curry earlier, and
I did.
If one of us went back in time and went, Mark, don't eat the curry. And Mom was like, oh my God, you're coming to it. Am I going to die? No, but you're going to regret that curry. You'd be like, why did you come back? You could have done anything else.
Yeah.
I don't regret that curry. It was a nice curry.
No, but that's just an example of what we could have, Matt, don't throw away that jacket you had when you were younger. It's going to be really cool.
That's a callback.
to open speech marks last week, close speech marks.
I mean, I'm going to post it twice now, that picture.
Yeah. So they get to the gallery where Levinson reveals he used to go to the studio quite a bit, but only to quickly buy paintings and then he would leave. He's recently bought 3 paintings from Jabara called the Red Circles, which he paid £90,000 for, and then sold to a Saudi Arabian gentleman, and he sold them cash, which apparently is now the norm in the art world.
Is it?
That's what he says. He's apparently art is a currency itself, which I think is up there with black isn't just a colour, it's a mood.
There are some lines in this. 99% of it is actually quite well done, but just occasionally you're like, oh, come on.
When he said I sold them to a Saudi Arabian gentleman, I don't know about you two, but my immediate thought went to the stereotypical, he's got the headscarf on and the white. He's not just a bloke in a suit. He's in the very stereotypical sunglasses kind of chic kind of look. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was probably... I'll be honest, I was expecting to see that later on in the episode.
Yeah, definitely. He said now he's sold them. He hasn't got any works by Jabara, which he laments that the price will definitely go up now because he's dead. Everybody's very cold about the fact that this bloke's dead.
I wonder why Anthony Horowitz hates the art industry so much, because this is clearly a jab at the whole industry. Whereas I'm not so sure he was jabbing at fashion last week, but he definitely is putting his oar in on this.
Yeah. I think and we talked about this in the last episode when the actual fashion show starts and it's just kind of a bit odd that Horowitz just in the stage direction just went, the show happens.
What? Yeah, I think it's a case where like it's when writers don't fully understand or like only have a surface level understanding of a certain industry or something. There's a great Mitchell and Webb sketch.
I was thinking of this.
Yeah, they're talking to these writers who are writing medical drama, and it's like, we could have done some research, but you know what? Let's just go with the drama. And you suddenly see like a medical drama where people have absolutely no research, and it's like, we need medicine. This guy's medicine. And he goes, give me the electric. And he goes, this guy's died because of too much electric.
Yeah, this man's incredibly poorly. Yeah, yeah, that was a good sketch actually. What's it? They hold a buttercup under his chin after he's dead.
Brilliant.
Slade asks Levinson if he knows a man called Crowley, to which Levinson replies in the negative. Slade then decides he's going to get on a plane. But Holly stops him because Crowley could be the pilot. Which I thought was funny, considering we have seen Slade on a stretcher. So if that was what happened, he looks really good considering he survived a plane crash.
But he always looks good, Carl.
True. The jacket will protect. Do you need a parachute? Don't need one. Got this jacket. So as they're walking along, all of a sudden a man in a long coat walks past that Holly immediately recognises as Crowley. They give chase but lose him, which I thought was a cool thing where they run around a corner and they run into a mirror. So they get confused because they run in and just immediately see themselves, which I thought was quite good. In the excitement of it all, Slade reveals that... in the excitement of it all, Holly reveals that Slade will be shot at 6 p.m.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, the man who's called Crowley, a lot of people will probably recognise. Do both of you recognise the actor from the multitude of things he's been in?
No.
I did recognise him, but I didn't look him up for some reason. Enlighten me.
He is Christopher Adamson, who has been in a lot of stuff and always playing the same type of character as like a very weird... He's either a thug or a gangster or a weirdo, and very rarely is he playing like a positive role. Prior to this, he was in a few things, like he's in Judge Dredd, the Stallone one.
Okay. Is he?
Yeah. He's in Judge Dredd. He's in The Three Musketeers, the Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland one. He turns up in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I think he's got he's got a few lines in that one. He always turns up in short roles, but it's ones you remember because of his face, basically. After this, he does The Fifth Element.
Cool.
But then he turns up in a lot of the standards that we're talking about. So you've got your Vanishing Mans, The Bill, stuff like that. But then he will turn up in American stuff quite often. Like he's in The Count of Monte Cristo, and he's in all kinds of stuff. He's in Duck Patrol with David Tennant and Richard Wilson.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
David Tennant and Richard Wilson? Never heard of that before.
No, I've never heard of Duck Patrol.
Basically they're like river cops, and it's very boring. But this is basically a guy. If you need a rough and rugged looking person, you get Chris Adamson. Like he's in Pirates of the Caribbean and lots of other stuff as well, because he's got a very, very, as you can see in this episode, a very descriptive face. So yeah, this is who he is, and he's in a lot of things, and you'll probably spot him more now in stuff. Now you've seen him in this. Right, back at the station, Nikki can't find Slade, which Gresham's not too happy about. However, Morris may have a lead. Louise Jabara sent letters to Ken threatening to kill him on multiple occasions, and we witnessed the painful experience of Morris trying to read the letter.
Yeah, brilliant.
Which I think, the guy who plays Morris doesn't have a lot, but what he does have, he knocks out of the park, I think, pretty much.
I would agree, yeah. I think all of the characters, they could have been properly just generic, almost soulless stereotypes. But they were fortunate enough to get a very, very strong cast who put some nuance in the characters.
Yeah.
Particularly in this instance, he could have just been the dundering, unlikable guy, but you find yourself weirdly liking him and not quite being able to put your finger on why. And I think that's a credit to the writing and the actor, to be honest with you.
It's almost that thing for me of, he's so dumb. How did he get to be a detective? Like, whose uncle is on the board? Or, is his uncle on the board to get him that job? Because sometimes he's weird. He's either so daft he can't read a letter properly, or then he's like actually a really good copper in some situations.
Mm.
You're almost rooting for him to like not get fired.
Like I mentioned last week, maybe Grissom hired him, and I am beginning to think that Grissom is actually the most incompetent person there, because she just seems to be wanting to shout at people. Probably hired Morris because like he was, I don't know, he probably cheaper. He's probably cheaper than like qualified people.
All the good ones moved on to other departments, and she was left with Morris.
Yeah, and like no one wanted Morris, and Slade's too much of a wild card. Yeah.
So the letters were sent a couple of days ago, and then he turns up dead. So Gresham sends Nikki and Morris to Louisa's house and place of work. As they leave, they have a bit of a debate on who's going to be good cop, who's going to be bad cop, and Nikki's going to be bad cop.
Oh, Nikki.
I think it was good. I think it's Morris just kind of, pushing Nikki to expand his thing. Like, you can be bad cop. You can do this, Nikki. Well, let's flip the script here.
Then again, though, unless bad cop is just effort, you have to commit to the role. You have to stay in character. It's a level of concentration and determination that Morris just doesn't have unless it's standing outside a door.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably which is probably the top thing he puts on his CV.
As they leave, they go past an office where you see Slade and Holly have been hiding. They sneak into Holly's office and use the computer to look up Crowley, who's been in and out of his prison all his life. And then they find out where he lives and head over to that estate. The estate, when they get there, I think it's a fairly famous estate. It turns up in a few things. The most thing I thought of is it's in Kingsman.
Mm-hmm.
Where Eggsy lives at the beginning, because it's quite visually. I recognise it from that, and I also recognise this is a far reach from Ross Kemp's Christmas Carol adaptation.
You know what? I've actually seen that. I remember watching that.
I remember ITV have signed Ross Kemp. Bloody hell, this is going to be great. The first thing he did was a Christmas Carol, and it's like, yeah, this was worth it. This was worth it. Yeah. I love my brain. Right. Yep. So they get to the estate and they hit a dead end because there's 6 locks on the door. Why would you put 6 locks on the outside of your door? Was the thing that confused me.
I didn't spot that, but you're bang on. Fuck me.
It's
clearly just a visual, isn't it? But
yeah,
it's a mistake.
It's just so that you don't jimmy the lock, which I'm pretty sort of like. To be fair, I'm surprised again. This being Jeff Slade, the locks didn't just unlock out of embarrassment.
Yeah. Slade decides to turn into Action Slade and starts making his way up the fire escape to the roof. And then I've got in brackets here, there's a pretty well done stunt for Saturday night BBC One as Slade trapeze acts, tightrope walks across the roof and then jumps down to the balcony. This one, we talked about in the last episode how you can tell it's Michael French, jumping in front of a train. And on this one is blatantly, that's the stunt man, but the close-ups are Michael French.
Yeah. I'm glad that they didn't have Michael French do the stuntman stuff on this. And I was flabbergasted that they let him do the stuntman stuff on the train. Absolutely flabbergasted, but it was definitely him.
Yeah. So once he lands on the balcony, he smashes the glass door open with his trusty gun that we haven't seen in a while.
Who uses a gun to break a window?
Slade.
You wrap your fist in like your clothes and punch it, don't you?
Yeah.
But you've got a gun, Mark.
Yeah, but surely it's really fucking dangerous to bash things with a gun. It could backfire and shit.
Yeah, but you won't damage your hand.
Yeah, you just shoot into the next door neighbour's balcony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you put the safety on, I'm pretty sure that it'd be fine.
Yeah. While searching, he lets Holly in and they search the flat. It's at this point Holly realizes Slade would never have heard of Crowley if it wasn't for the fact she raised his name to him, which seems a bit late.
Yeah.
However, she doesn't want to split up as she's worried about Slade. They find a notebook in it with a load of names, and one of them, Sutherland, is circled. They both know it from somewhere, but before they can remember where, Crowley has returned.
Dun, dun, dun.
Slade confronts Crowley, who immediately attacks him. Slade overpowers him and arrests him for the murder of Ken Jabara, which Crowley looks incredibly baffled at. Just a really good physical comedy of like, what? When he tells him what he's been arrested with. Meanwhile, at the florist, Nikki and Morris are going over the letters with Louise Jabara while the shop's being searched. They appear to have given up on the good cop, bad cop thing. And they're just talking to her. While the shop's being searched, they find a painting, which Louise states was given to her. However, Nikki notices the shirt it's wrapped in and it's covered in blood, leading to the best line delivery of the episode. Did either of you two notice this?
Go on.
He just goes, "This isn't paint," and it's very, very toast, very Matt Berry. It's kind of, yeah. You get the feeling he may have turned to the director and gone, "Can I do that again? We haven't got time." You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah.
Back at the station, Crowley isn't saying anything, leading to him being locked up. Slade's happy as this means because he can keep Crowley for 24 hours, he's not going to get shot. And he takes Holly off to celebrate, which, shagging, I thought was going to be the thing. We talked
it's
about
a bit early in the will they, won't they?
Yeah.
I didn't think they'd be shagging. I thought something would go wrong to stop them from shagging.
Has there ever been a show where the will they, won't they kind of resolve in the first episode and they just go for it?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
It was Spooks where they introduced a character that you were led to believe was going to be the main protagonist, and then they killed him in the first episode. That was so clever.
That was because that got a load of complaints when because didn't they dunk him in a deep fat fryer?
That was Lisa.
No, they put their face. Yeah, and didn't they also put someone's face on a ring on an electric cooker as well?
Oh, bloody hell. Spooks was good. It went a bit weird towards the end when it was just like, and we're going to have a new lead every series.
And then they did Sci-Fi Spooks, didn't they, as well?
Did they?
I'm sure this has come up before because I remember saying that I've not watched Spook. I stopped watching Spooks after the second episode because of that deep fat fryer scene. I think it was about 11 or 12.
Yeah, they ended it on a film, which is quite rare, and the film's actually pretty good, but it does wrap up the series, which I thought was quite a nice thing. But it doesn't have this spoilers for Spooks, I suppose. Every series, whenever they get a new lead and they replace the lead, the old lead will be in the first episode of the new series and gets killed. Like they had Rupert Penry Jones as the lead for a couple of series, and then in the first episode of his last series, he gets blown up, and then they bring in Richard Armitage. But by the end of the TV, there's nobody left. Mm-hmm. So they're like, "We're going to do a movie with who?" It's like we haven't got a lead, and they got Kit Harington to do it, which
nice.
I thought was and it works. It's quite good. Apparently they had issues with filming because they're filming in London, and I think Vesuvius was out at the same time, so they'd be filming and buses would go past with Kit Harington on the side.
I've looked up the sci-fi one of Spooks. It was called Code 9, set after a nuclear attack.
That rings a bell. I know they did a teenage one as well.
No. Brilliant.
Yeah, they did. They did like a kid's spin-off of Spooks, which felt a bit like they hadn't read the room properly. Anyway, Louise reveals that while she's being interviewed, that she did go to the studio the night of the murder. However, she stepped over the body and took the picture from the easel before leaving, which is what Kelly saw. Again, no one gives a shit about this artist.
No. Fascinating, isn't it? It's quite. I like it. I like that it's also callous.
Gresham and Morris believe Louise did the murder. However, when they want to charge her, they see Slade has arrested Crowley on trumped-up charges. I didn't realise you could only do one arrest at a time, which seems to come across as the case here. So they release Crowley immediately, and he heads off in a taxi that they've paid for, laughing. Elsewhere, Slade and Holly are at an auction house, which to me is a very weird way of celebrating Slade not going to be shot. Where a work by Jabara is sold for £450,000. 450,000? Yep, no, I got that right. £450,000. Eventually, they notice that Levinson is in the crowd. However, he leaves. The auctioneer tells Slade the death of Jabara will cause an increase in price. Also, she's bemused to hear Levinson's name, as due to some poor investments, she didn't believe he was dealing in art anymore. So now it's kind of shifting, and it's moving more towards Levinson. It seems to be quite shady.
Yeah, this seems like less of a Poirot style plot and almost a little more linear this week.
Yeah.
Or is that me?
No, it does feel a lot more linear. I think it's because they go back really, it goes back really early. We only know a couple of things: is the Crowley thing and Slade gets shot. So everything else is pretty new, and that's all from once she goes back. So yeah, you're right. It's very straightforward on this, which I think kind of maybe gets around the how can we have more straightforward episodes? Or we'll time travel really early on, and then we can talk in the past.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a nice flip of the format to almost a more simplistic crime drama plot.
Again, I think it's also just answering another question, another fundamental question about whether they can change time that the show keeps trying to flirt with, but the characters don't really know about, but also introduces the idea that they create their own issues, more or less. So I think that's the main thing. I think the murder is the B plot more than anything, but.
So they want to talk to Levinson about the red circles, which would now be worth £900,000, and they want to talk about the person who bought them. Slade is just happy that there's only an hour left until Crowley doesn't shoot him. Which you would. You'd have a spring in your step. It's like, I've got an hour to go. I'm not going to get shot.
La 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 la.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'd be quite pleased I wasn't getting shot, to be honest with you.
Meanwhile, Crowley, gun in pocket. Why he shows the gun before he goes into the shop, I'm not too sure. Heads to Sutherland's, which is revealed to be a jeweller's shop next to Levinson's gallery. And he steals some diamonds from a very kindly looking old jeweller.
Right. Is this a stereotype, an old man owning a jeweller's?
Yeah.
Because I use a jeweller's, and I've got a nice watch, basically. I've got a very nice watch, and it occasionally... My dad gave me on my 21st birthday. Yeah, but it's a nice watch. And it does sometimes need repairs. Whereas most people, if your watch stops, you would just chuck it out and get another one. So I go to a place called Alfred Mutter's in the Northern Quarter in Manchester. And he is the exact stereotype of this old geezer that was in this episode. It made me think about the nice, kindly old fella who charges me next to nothing to... I don't know, if I take the winder off, if I pull the winder cog off or whatever, he will just do it for peanuts, and he's really lovely. Also, fuck the watch lab, they charge me lots.
It just gives off the impression of this is what Santa does the rest of the year.
Yes, true.
Yeah, so he steals some diamonds. Holly and Slade happen to be walking past, and they realise what the notebook meant. And just as this happens, Crowley comes out of the shop. Slade is shocked, but gives chase. Crowley fires off some shots. Slade fires off some shots. And stands in front of a car window that's just been shot through with basically a target around his midsection. That just, I don't know if this was done on purpose, but there was some bits in this where Slade was like, he may as well have painted "Shoot me here" on himself.
Also, a police officer has to literally kind of document every single shot. Every single bullet has to count. It's not like you can fire your gun willy-nilly.
In a public square.
Yeah,
well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He's got a lot of paperwork headed his way for that behaviour.
Jeff Slade doesn't do paperwork. Paperwork does Jeff Slade.
Wow, Matt.
It's very, I don't know if you remember this, the comic strip, The Bullshitters.
No.
It was a parody of like The Professionals, where they're basically just run around and shoot things and this, that, and the other. It's very like, there's lots of like, go, 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 gov, gov, gov. It was very much parody. And I think this was, but part of the thing was they would run around in like their underwear with leather jackets on and no shirt, and it was all very homoerotic. But Slade, I think Slade is a bit of a throwback to like The Professionals and that kind of thing of, yeah, they've got gun. He's a cop out of time almost, which is quite funny when you think about it. He's almost like a 70s throwback cop in the 90s because he's got a gun. He will use it, all this kind of stuff. So now we're in a full hostage situation. Gresham arrives to be told the shooter is Crowley, leading to a great oh shit moment from Sue Johnston. Again, like I said, great face acting, just that look of, bollocks, because she let him go. Inside, the hostages are asking to be released. The phone rings. Sorry, go on, Matt.
So, the hostage family, played by Paul Deuist and Maria Hearn as the parents. The children are played by Nicholas Horowitz and Cassian Horowitz.
Oh.
And quick Google are Anthony Horowitz's children.
Oh, that's quite cool.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's probably cheaper as well.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to come to work with Daddy today?
Just stand there. Just stand there and just don't move. And if someone aims a gun at you, just do a shock face. Like that, that's perfect.
Just complain that you're hungry and scared. Yep, yeah. That's great.
Do they still act?
I didn't check. I doubt it. But, well, maybe. We shall have to have a look and be back with the next episode.
Yeah.
So Crowley takes the phone and Gresham speaks to him. Not before he speaks to Levinson, who is incredibly calm and British about all of this. When he answers, yes, this is Levinson. No, he is here. No, he's got a gun. He's really not fazed by any of it. Crowley will only negotiate with Slade. And then I've got here, Slade tries to sacrifice Nicky or Morris.
Yeah, I don't want to go in there.
Yeah, I'm not going in there. He's just coming up with new reasons why he couldn't go in there until Gresham reminds him there's innocent people in there. And obviously Slade's hero complex kicks in.
How the fuck was it? So basically, in his head, he was just like, it's only Levinson.
Yeah. Doesn't she? I think she says to him, "There's women and children in there." Is like, and that bloke, the bloke from the family, he's in there too. It's just kind of. But yeah, Gresham's like, no, there's women and children in there. So Holly and Slade have a chat. Slade tells Holly she needs to get back to the machine, and that she was right. You can't change the past. Holly wants to stay, but there's nothing that she can really do if she does. So Holly leaves as Slade gets into the gallery as he exchanges himself for the family. I thought this was quite a lovely scene that Holly is actually completely powerless, and the only thing she can do is go back to the present where she might be able to do something. And it was just a nice little bit between the two characters, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes Holly quite passive and not really involved in the plot for the second bit. I think technically all she's there for is to set off a lot of this. So, as much with that in mind, as much as this is like Holly goes back in time, it's not really her episode, is it? She just sets
No.
things off, but she doesn't really have anything to do after that, apart from kind of look really conflicted. Which, on reflection, is a bit. I don't know how you would solve that to make her more active in the plot later on. But yeah, I mean, aside from kickstarting Slade going after Crowley, she doesn't really do anything else in the episode.
No, I didn't think of it that way.
Isn't that kind of the point, that once again, time traveling is what got them in the shit in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. It's that thing of you don't... I think it happens a lot, doesn't it, in the shows? Like, they don't realise it at the time, and then once they're actually in the middle of it, they're like, oh, crap, we caused this.
Yeah.
And once it's started, you've got to write it out.
They made this.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
You are a promo machine today, Matt.
Thank you.
So, inside, the SWAT team gathers around the building. Crowley makes Levinson open a door to a back room which Levinson is not up for. But when they're in there, they discover something. The red circles. Levinson didn't sell them. They're just in storage.
Dun, dun, dun.
During all this, Holly is standing outside her flat, spinning in the street, which I thought was an odd choice because the shooting of this is very, very straightforward. But this felt like a bit of artistic license on Horowitz's part or Rick Stroud's part. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I hadn't even thought about it until you said it. Matt?
Again, I think it's just like, okay, we need to give Chloe and Annett something to do just to bide tension, fill things out. So, yeah, just swing the camera around.
Yeah, they needed something to cut to and fro back from. Inside the gallery, there's a struggle over the gun and a shot is fired. But who is it? Turns out it's Crowley. Slade's fine. However, in his amazement at this, Levinson attacks him from behind in what we talked about last episode. Perfect 90s, I've been hit on the back of the head acting.
Yeah, exactly. I won't do my rant for the second episode in a row.
Okay. Slade realizes Levinson killed Jabara so he could sell the red circles at an elevated price. But Levinson shoots Slade. Nikki and Morris run in to find Levinson pointing a gun over Crowley. What do you guys think of this twist in that it wasn't Crowley that shoots Slade?
I loved it.
Same.
I just didn't expect it. And when it happened, I was like, oh, shit, I should have spotted that. But that's the perfect kind of moment. If you think, oh, shit, I should have spotted it, and you don't, that's, for me, is good writing.
Yeah, same. I think it's quite well set up in that. I think because they spend so much time with Crowley and the way things are. And I mean, it's at this point it's easy before the reveal of the red circles, like, oh yeah, it's Levinson. Levinson's the git. But then I think it's when you suddenly realise that it's when Levinson has the gun and he's capable of, like, when he kills Crowley, he's like, oh, okay, because it's very kind of well done and like last minute. Oh wow, that was pretty good, and I again would appreciate just how much setup they've done to build up Crowley as like a almost like arch rival or the foe for this episode, and it turns out that it isn't him. So
So then we go to basically seeing the news report from earlier with Slade being loaded into an ambulance. However, we see something Holly didn't see when she was watching earlier, is the reason they were naming Crowley is because he is the second body that they're removing from the gallery, which I thought was a nice little touch.
yeah,
Although I don't think it was made fully aware that Holly missed a bit at the very beginning. But I quite like that this is like Holly didn't see the full thing, because then you see Crowley getting put on a stretcher into an ambulance as well.
I just point out that I don't hate it. I find it mildly annoying. Is the TV trope of, news story happens to be exactly plot reasons seen by the characters that need to see it at the exact same time. And that's what happened here. Yeah, that's a trope that it's always like. I don't like physically hate it, but it's just like a eye rolling, like ugh. It's not as bad as the trope of zooming into pictures and then suddenly clearing up to see a tiny registration plate. It's not that bad, but yeah, there's a slight laziness to it.
The day that technology becomes fully available is the day all those films will be justified. So back in the gallery, Levinson is telling Gresham how Crowley shot Slade and then he shot Crowley, and is quite convincing.
I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense. I mean, it probably would make sense if you think about it. I mean, if you're considering how things happened in self-defense, that probably would make sense, because at the moment they have the killer of Jabara, who's his ex-wife.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. They've got no reason to suspect Levinson to be of any wrongdoing.
Yeah. I thought in this scene Gresham doesn't look convinced by it all. But maybe that was just me.
Either that, was just like, bastard, I wanted to shoot him myself.
Yeah. What, Slade?
Yeah.
She wanted to shoot Slade.
I think we scat on my notes. I think we did miss a bit. I actually got near the end of my notes in capital letters, "Find Slade," and I think that was a Grisham thing from earlier.
Yes, she says it a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
I think she says it at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's the Sue Johnson scene stealing, doing very little, going "Find Slade." So.
Holly walks back into her building, meeting Danny on the way. Danny asks her how her speech went, and Holly, with proper heartbreak in her eyes, answers that she was proved right about her speech, which I thought was a very nice bit by Chloe Annett.
I think I want to very briefly go back as well to something I missed in my notes. Is what we haven't really kind of focused on is when Slade initially does try and avoid going into where he knows he's going to get hurt. I think the fact that he eventually realizes that he has to and that he's sacrificing himself, that's like proper hero level shit. And I know we've gently mocked Slade for being bravado, 90s yellow jacket, stereotype cop. But I think in that particular scene, he really did come across as a massive hero.
Yeah, because he does negotiate the family to go, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's got that resignation like the end of Blackadder Goes Forth, where Baldrick's got a plan, but Blackadder just says, well, it's going to have to wait, because he's resigned to his fate, isn't he? That's kind of what it reminded myself of. I don't know if you agree with me on that, or...
Yeah, kind of resolution to your own fate, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, I'm going to die, but I'm at peace with it. Oh, well, I did all I could, apart from get on a plane.
And win the lottery.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Yeah.
And spend a week in the past with Holly.
Yeah, you'd have to go to a hotel, and who knows what would happen.
Yeah.
What would they do to pass that time? So Holly said she was proved right, and then goes back to the present. Immediately exiting the room once she comes back, we see Danny won the fight with his vacuum cleaner from earlier.
A vacuum cleaner on a pole match.
And not only did he win, but he's repairing the vacuum cleaner as well, so everything's okay.
Brilliant.
Outside the hospital, Levinson calls in to ask about Slade's condition. On hearing that they're about to operate, he enters the hospital and steals a lab coat. Again, going back to that thing we talked about last episode of, if you say you're a doctor or look like a doctor, you're a doctor.
Yeah.
Continuity. Then again, though, I mean, in the writing order, that episode is supposed to happen after this, isn't it?
Yes, true. Holly then arrives at the hospital and goes to talk to a ward nurse who's incredibly confused because she just spoke to her. That it'd be quite interesting to see an episode if there was a future series from the point of, in the same way we had that Doctor Who episode where it was from the point of view of someone he ran into. If they did an episode of Crime Traveller where it was from the point of view of, I don't know, Danny or somebody like that, somebody who they run into multiple times, but it's from different times and things like that. I think that'd be quite an interesting one to do.
Yeah, or at least you have like quite a high-profile guest star who's like embroiled in like a mystery or something, and you're just constantly seeing two different versions of Slade and Holly, but you don't really see the time stuff.
I like both of those ideas, but I think Danny-centric episode is something they would have definitely done, and if they didn't, they fucking should have done in series 2.
Where it's just his backstory is revealed and it's quite sad, but it's, you just think that, his wife passed away or something like that. It's, so inside Slade's room, Levinson enters and picks up a scalpel, and he cuts Slade's drip lines, only to get interrupted by Holly. Levinson seems surprised to see her, but then raises the scalpel to attack Holly, only to be stopped by Slade. He is alive.
And
this was hokey as fuck.
Yeah. This is like you could kind of see coming at this point. I think there's
when we talk about moments that we remember from the series, for some reason I remember Slade yelling Levinson I just remember when we first started saying we're going to do these episodes, I remembered this moment. And I don't know why. It's just whether it was just him shouting or what, but I just remember this moment in the thing. It's a very odd memory for it to trigger.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know. It's a pretty memorable moment, I would say. A very heroic thing.
Yeah. So Slade subdues Levinson and hands him off to Nikki and Morris, who are hiding next door. It was quite nice to see the three of them working as a unit as well. I thought that was it doesn't happen often in the series, I don't think.
Yeah.
The only time I can think of is in the first episode, and then they botched it.
Nice to see them being successful as a team.
Yeah.
Not being carried by Slade. By Slade's deductive reasoning.
Back at the station, Slade explains that Levinson needed to kill him because he knew that Levinson had killed Jabara. With him dead, he could sell the 3 red circles for nearly £1 million. However, there was no evidence that he'd killed Jabara, so they set the trap for him at the hospital. But how did Slade survive the shooting? What do you guys think?
I think something that doesn't actually make sense. I've looked it up, unfortunately, and he would be dead.
Same. It's like, it's physics, like TV physics.
Yeah. So I looked this up, and you would need 3 to 4 reams of paper for paper to stop a bullet, and that book is not the same as 4 reams of printer paper. So unfortunately,
How much is a ream?
A ream? I have a ream of paper right next to me, actually, in my office. Let me see. 500 sheets of A4 paper in a ream.
So you need at least 2,000 sheets of paper.
Somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000, yeah.
Well, if there was ever a jacket with a pocket big enough to hold 2,000 pieces of paper,
Yeah.
it's that
Basically,
jacket.
you'd need two Game of Thrones books.
Yeah, but all he had was Crowley's notebook, which he even states is a couple of inches of paper and leather in his
Yeah, I
pocket.
mean,
And-
obviously the leather could be taken into account, but even that, it's a slim sheet of leather that isn't going to make much difference, and you'd have needed more paper.
weirdly, also, he's still got it on him, including the bullet embedded in it.
Yeah, which is evidence. But I think what's really sad is it reminded me of. Do you remember a couple of years ago there was a bloke who actually did this to become a YouTube star, got his girlfriend to shoot him in a book in his chest, and it killed him. And obviously this was recorded way before that, but yeah, that was fucking grim when that happened. And yeah, that it's a shame that I'd say that across the 8 episodes, this is the most bullshit moment, I think.
Biggest leap of faith you have to take with it.
Yeah, in a show that features traveling through time, the most kind of bullshit version of it is the bullet. Apart from the time.
No,
travel.
I think you suspend your disbelief for a show
Yeah,
that's premise is about time travel, but the crime element is supposed to be like Poirot, and this doesn't cut it for me, I'm afraid.
No, it's fine.
So when he's asked why he arrested Crowley in the first place, Slade replies, intuition, which he does say a couple of times in the series. However, I felt you could see a look on Sue Johnston's face like the seeds are being planted, that something's up here. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, I think, like we've said a few times now, they were definitely gunning for a second, third, maybe fourth kind of series run with like little threads and little seeds that they'd planted. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think eventually she would know about it, and that would be a big kind of arc trying to hide shit from her and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe she gives Nikki the assignment to look into Slade and Holly that I mentioned last week. Where was it last week? No, this week. I can't remember when I suggested it about Nikki going off to in the future series to investigate it. Perhaps that she tells Nikki, goes like, "You're asking me to do it? Well, who the bloody hell am I going to ask? Morris?"
Yes. I'd like to see an episode where she has asked Morris and it goes completely wrong, so she asks Nikki instead. The next episode.
Either that or the first person. Either that or you got like Master Series 2 that happening, and then the first person to find out is actually Morris.
Nobody believes it.
Yeah.
Right, so we wrap up back in Holly's office. Slade says he owes Holly. Holly says no, he doesn't, because if it wasn't for her, he would never have gone after Crowley and he never would have got shot. So essentially, Holly owes him. So Slade realizes this and says, so if I ever need the machine, I'll be in touch.
He's fucking obsessed.
Yeah. Loves the machine. Maybe he just likes the idea of going back in time, solving crimes, and not aging. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of getting extra life because you travel in time, and that time when you travel, you kind of double up. Yeah. I mean, I quite like that. That sounds all right, actually.
And Slade walks away cheekily, is how I described it, looking over his shoulder as he goes, while Holly looks on with the slightest glimmer of a smile on her face. Only just. But I thought this was quite good from Chloe Annett, because there's that thing of she's smiling because obviously it's Slade and he's a cheeky chappy and all this, but the slight crawling, creeping in of this is dangerous. We shouldn't be using the machine. Did either of you two get that off this, or?
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, I think it's really sad that it didn't get a second series and it didn't get to play with all the stuff that it sowed.
I think I'm going to go back to what I was saying. I think it was the last episode, and again, it's probably because it was supposed to be a later episode than this, when they talk about the stuff that's happened with the kind of quite tight, subtle continuity. And I think there is actually elements of character development, or very subtle character development, that is happening. So I do think that perhaps if the previous episode was aired after this, like it was meant to, I think I think the kind of jealousy that she had in the last episode, I think is slightly more understandable after this.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, if during this she may have realised that the extent of how she feels about him once she knows that he's going to die.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Matt, anything you want to add about what we've seen today?
I think my thing is I liked it. I liked how different it was and what they tried to do. The only thing that perhaps I think how much Holly didn't actually do much in the second half of it. Apart of the second half of it, I don't know whether that's the point or not. I just don't know. I just think that because from what she set up, the fact she's got no control over it or has nothing to really do apart from be a passive character. That's the only kind of niggle I've got. But other than that, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I think it's the same. The niggle I have is the massive plot hole that he would be dead if he got shot in the book. Other than that, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I liked how they played with what they had rather than a cookie-cutter monster of the week.
Yeah, I like how these episodes are. I mean, obviously for a detective drama, you do have to, a lot of the time, solve the episode in 45 minutes to an hour. But I think with these, which this is going to sound terrible considering what the show is, there's no time wasted.
Lol.
Yeah. And they just, they get to it. They know what they're doing. I mean, it's a sign because obviously Horowitz is a very prolific writer for television and for, I mean, there's a reason they gave him Bond in the end of how well he can craft one of these stories together. So before we get off, there's only one thing to do, which is the plugs. Matt, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me online if they look for Pick a Disc on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which is basically linked to my podcast where I talk to people about albums that they like. I'm also one of the hosts of the Yellow Jackets podcast, which is a podcast focused on the Michael French clothing in TV series that he has, as well as a side gig of talking about a Showtime show that's doing quite well. I'm also a host of a point-and-click adventure podcast called Ask Us About Loom. So you can find that on Twitter under Ask Us About Loom.
Excellent. Mark?
And after years of being mocked by the other hosts, I only have one other podcast. How many of you got? How many of you got, Matt?
About half that you had in your prime.
Not true. I only ever had 4 on the go at any one point. Anyway, I've only got one other podcast. It's about the Child's Play and Chucky franchise. So we look at the telly show, we look at the films, we look at merchandising, we've looked at comic books, we've looked at anything linked to the Child's Play and Chucky franchise and have a lovely time doing it. That's my friend Dev and me. And we are at Chucky Vision on Twitter. And if you want me, it's at Mark Adams HC. And podcast-wise, if any of the stuff that we've chatted about is something that you fancy, you can just, whatever you're listening to, Shipwrecks and Comatose on, you can search for the name of the podcast on that provider and it'll be there too.
Excellent. And myself, you can find me at allmylinks.com/Mr. Carl, and it's the unabbreviated MISTER. Again, not got a great deal going on at the moment. So that is all for this episode. Next episode, we will be doing an episode which features one of my favourite guest stars of the entire series. So I'm really quite looking forward to that one. But until next time, all that's left to say is...
Damn you, Slade!
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.
Hello everyone, this is Tony Black, co-host and producer of You Have Been Watching, a podcast all about British sitcoms. Myself and co-host Robert Turnbull take you on a range of Britcom subjects and shows in our discussions, including greats such as Fawlty Towers.
Basil, in the same way as David Brent and Alan Partridge and Victor Meldrew, Basil works best when he is actually dealing with arseholes.
Lesser known curios such as 15 Stories High.
There are all these kind of gag setups being put in place in that episode, and then the sort of the end minute or so is basically the payoff to all of these gags, and it's very, very sitcom-y.
And even top 10s such as sitcom theme tunes. If we have to put composers of theme tunes in context for British sitcoms, I think Ronnie Hazelhurst, he's possibly the John Williams of...
I was just going to say, he is the John Williams of
I think he is.
British sitcom.
We're available on all podcast platforms and on social media at YHB Watching Pod on Twitter and Facebook. So please subscribe, get in touch, and come and have a laugh with us.